Okay, welcome back. I'm now going to do my week 3 reviews of the NFL and my picks along the way. So, starting with last Thursday's game between the New York Football Giants and the San Francisco 49ers, I did predict that the 49ers would get the victory, and boy oh boy did they ever come away with a huge win. 30-12 is the final score. They are now sitting at 3-0, while the Giants have fallen to 1-2. Quite possibly one of the few upsets that happened over the weekend involved this game. The Indianapolis Colts went into Baltimore to take on the Ravens. I predicted the Ravens would get the victory, and they just came up short. Final score 22-19. The Ravens and the Colts are both sitting at 2-1. The Titans took on the Cleveland Browns in a game I thought the Titans would be able to get a victory, but they did not show up at all. Final score Cleveland 27, Tennessee 3. The Titans have now fallen to 1-2, while the Browns have improved to 2-1. The Atlanta Falcons went into the Motor City to take on the Detroit Lions. I predicted that the Falcons would have gotten the away victory, but it was not meant to be. Final score Detroit 20, Atlanta 6. Both teams are now sitting at 2-1. The New Orleans Saints went into Green Bay to take on the Packers, and I did predict the Packers would get the victory. At halftime, it was 17-0 for the Saints, so I thought this game is over. There's no way that the Packers are going to come back. And boy, oh boy, did they make a comeback for the ages. 18-17 is the final score, and they both are now sitting at 2-1. This is probably the biggest upset. I'm going to say this is probably the biggest upset here. Two AFC South foes between the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think myself, along with anybody else who follows football, predicted the Jaguars would be able to roll over the Texans, but it was actually the other way around. 37-17 was the final score. Both these teams are now sitting at 1-2. Whew. What can you say about this game? I predicted the Dolphins would get the victory, but I did not think they would put up a big 7-0 on the scoreboard. Final score 7D, not 17, to 20 in favor of the Dolphins. They are now sitting perfect on top of that AFC East division at 3-0, while these Denver Broncos, oh man, what else can you say about this team? But they're spiraling out of control pretty quickly. They are now 0-3. The Los Angeles Chargers went into Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Both teams were winless coming into this matchup, so someone had to get the win no matter what the cost. I predicted the Vikings would finally get the first win of the season, but it was not meant to be. Final score: the Chargers 28, the Vikings 24. So the Chargers are now sitting at 1-2, while the Vikings are still winless on the season at 0-3. The New England Patriots went into New York to take on the Jets in what was a very low scoring affair. I thought the Jets would be able to pull this victory out, but it was not meant to be. Final score New England 15, New York 10. Both these teams are now sitting at 1-2. I did predict for this particular matchup that the Bills would get the victory over the Washington Commanders, but I didn't think it was going to be a blowout. 37-3 is the final score. Both these teams are now sitting at 2-1. The Carolina Panthers went into Seattle to take on the Seahawks, and I did predict that Seattle would get the victory, and it was a slugfest to say the least. Final score 37-27. The Seahawks have now improved to 2-1, while the Carolina Panthers are still winless on the season, sitting at 0-3. This matchup here is probably one of the many upsets that have happened last Sunday. The Dallas Cowboys went into Arizona, and after the Cardinals blew their lead against the Giants, I thought there's no way they'd have a hope in hell against a team like the Cowboys. But they stunned the world. They shocked the entire NFL world, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. Final score Arizona 28, the Cowboys 16. Dallas is now sitting at 2-1, while the Arizona Cardinals are sitting at 1-2. Chicago Bears went into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, and I think everybody and their mother predicted the Chiefs would get the victory. Final score 41 for Kansas City, 10 for Chicago. The Chiefs have now improved to 2-1 on the season, while the Bears are still winless, sitting at 0-3. The Sunday night matchup between two old AFC rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. And I thought having home field advantage would have been able to gotten you over the hump, but evidently it was not meant to be as the Steelers went into Vegas and got a huge victory over, like I said, their longtime rivals. Final score 23, the Raiders 18. Pittsburgh's now sitting at 2-1 on the season, while the Vegas Raiders have fallen to 1-2. There were two Monday night matchups. The first one took place in Tampa as they hosted the Philadelphia Eagles. Two 2-0 teams were facing off Monday night, so obviously someone had to give. The final score from Tampa, Philadelphia 25, the Buccaneers 11. So the Eagles are now soaring high, sitting at 3-0. But don't fear, Buccaneer fans, you're still sitting at 2-1 on the season. And the other game was a rematch of Super Bowl 56 between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. I thought because the Bengals have played so poorly over the first two games that they carried that into week 3, but they actually turned it around, even though Joe Burrow is playing injured. So despite me picking the Rams, it was not meant to be. Final score, Cincinnati 19 and the Rams 16. Both of these teams are now sitting at 1-2. As always, I make videos almost on the daily. If you happen to like this channel, feel free to hit that sub button. And as always, take care.